In this segment, an overview of Islamic theology. The main confession of Islam is, there is no other God but God. The concept of God here is pretty much the same as in the Jewish Bible and in the Christian Bible. One significant difference, though, is this idea. In the Christian New Testament, Jesus is worshipped right alongside God. He's been raised up to God's right hand and shares God's throne. Islam has viewed that as the sin of association, the sin of holding anything in the same sort of esteem you hold God, or considering anyone to be in any sense on God's level. That sin in Arabic is called shirk. Like Christianity and Judaism, Islam teaches that there are angels. It says that angels are made of light, that they're sexless, and that they're without free will. A number of angels are mentioned by name. There are 4 archangels and some other ministering angels. Here we'll just mention Gabriel, who we've seen in the Islamic story, or Jibra'il. In addition to angels, there are also jinn, or sometimes translated genies. And you shouldn't think of the kind of genies that you see in movies, where you rub the lamp and they come out. It's not really that idea. Historian Solomon Negosian says, jinn are mortal beings who exist mainly in communal groups, marrying and living an existence comparable to that of humanity. They are normally invisible, but may appear in human or other forms." End quote. They're associated with the desert, and they have been thought to possess humans. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. It might give you powers as a soothsayer or a poet or an astrologer. In popular belief, they're usually assumed to be hostile to humans, so they're much like the idea of demons in Christianity. In some parts of the Quran, they can be saved, they can submit to God and be believers, while in others, they seem to be equated with demons, so just by definition, evil. Islam also teaches the existence of Satan, called Iblis or Shaitan. In Surah 15, he's a jinn who's condemned for refusing to bow to Adam. As in Christianity, Shaitan is a tempter, but he can't control believers. Islam makes a distinction between 2 different kinds of prophet. An ordinary prophet, a Nabi, brings a message from God, but a messenger, a Rasul, also brings a book from God, and so is greater. All messengers are prophets, but not all prophets are messengers. Muhammad, they teach, is the seal of the prophets and is the final messenger. He comes at the end of 27 others, including Abraham, Moses, John the Baptist, and Jesus. A major theme of the Quran and of Islamic theology is God's just judgment of the human race. Preceding this great event, there are miscellaneous cosmic birth pangs mentioned. A trumpet sounds, the sun is darkened, stars fall, mountains crumble, seas boil. Shia believe that the Mahdi Imam will return, and he'll bring justice and vindicate the Shia as the true followers of God, and will reign for some finite time, after which God will judge. But for the Sunni majority, as we get closer to judgment time, there will be widespread moral decay. Christ will return and will destroy a certain person called the Deceiver, or the Antichrist. But after a while, Jesus dies and is buried in Medina like the prophet and the first 2 caliphs. As we've seen, Islam teaches that Jesus was a prophet, indeed a Rasul who brought a book. They also usually affirm that he was the promised Messiah sent to the Jews, and that he was ascended to heaven. Interestingly, they deny that he was killed on a cross. A verse in the Quran seems to say that they crucified the wrong person by accident, and the Islamic view has been that God would not abandon a righteous prophet like Christians think. The Quran, however, denounces calling Jesus the Son of God. It denies that God has a son. But to go back to the end of time, the cosmos is then disintegrated, and an angel will blow a trumpet, at which time the dead will be raised, and everyone will be judged by their deeds. Their good deeds will be weighed against their bad deeds on a scale, and there's a teaching that everyone will be handed a book containing all their deeds. It's said that the blessed receive the book in their right hand, and the damned receive it in their left hand. Then all must walk over a razor-thin bridge over hell, and the condemned will fall into hell. What is hell? There isn't a whole lot said about it, but it seems to include eternal torment or eternal suffering, although some theologians suppose it may last only so long as God wills. That is, some say the suffering may be finite, but surely the majority view is that it goes on forever. What about the blessed? The blessed are rewarded with heaven, or it's often translated as paradise. The Arabic word for this is Jannah, which literally means garden. And that's one of the main descriptions of paradise. It's described as a beautiful, cool garden. Countless people have observed that this seems an especially enticing image to people who live in the desert. It has a clear fountain of water, it has delicious fruits, comfortable couches on which to recline, a stream of delicious wine, and not to be neglected are the many beautiful dark-eyed virgins, the huri. One will also be waited on by male servants. But it says the greatest bliss is God's approval. What are we to make of this? Is this a heaven of sex and feasting? Well, different theologians differ on this. Some Islamic theologians will say it's all symbolic. The gardens, the wine, the beautiful women, the servants, it all just represents spiritual delights. I dare say that's not the majority view or the view of most Muslims. I think it's to be understood that these women are for the pleasure of the men who have entered paradise. And I've heard Islamic theologians speculate that there might be handsome young gentlemen for the ladies who make it to paradise, although those aren't mentioned anywhere. Nor does it say very much about the dark-eyed virgins, other than that they're very beautiful. Does the Quran say that a martyr will get 72 virgins in heaven? No, it doesn't say that anywhere, but there is a hadith somewhere that says that. The final theological issue in Islam is the issue of decrees, that is, divine decrees, decrees about what should happen in human history. Various passages in the Quran assert human freedom, but other passages assert universal divine foreknowledge, that God with certainty foreknows everything that will come to pass, and also universal predestination, that God decides the fate of everyone. Islamic theologians have argued for centuries about these, and some fall down more on the side of belief in freedom, and others more emphasize the predestination. You get something that can be called theological fatalism there. The majority view is that these are somehow consistent with one another, that we can be free even though our destinies are predetermined by God. In our next segment, the Quran's teaching about abrogation and jihad.